Ximena and the Desert Flower. In a small adobe house the color of the sunset lived a little girl named Ximena. From her window, she looked out at the big, quiet desert. "It looks so empty," she would whisper to the little cactus on her windowsill. One evening, her abuela sat beside her, her hands warm like freshly baked bread. "The desert is not empty, Mija," she said with a knowing smile. "It is full of sleeping magic. It just needs a little love to wake up." The next morning, just as the sun began to warm the sand, Ximena took a tiny, painted watering can and stepped outside. "I will find the magic," she said to a lizard sunning itself on a rock. The lizard blinked its sleepy eyes. She walked and walked. The sand stretched all around her. She saw tall saguaro cacti that looked like sleeping giants and rocks that were warm from the sun, but no magic. Feeling a little sad, she sat down next to a small, dry plant that looked thirsty and forgotten. She remembered her abuela's words about a little love. She looked at the tiny plant and then at her watering can. "Maybe you are the sleeping magic," she whispered. She tipped her can and gave the little plant a few precious drops of water. Ximena went home as the moon began to rise. That night, she dreamed of the desert, but it wasn't brown and quiet. It was filled with swirls of pink, yellow, and purple, like a painter's secret garden. As soon as the sun peeked over the horizon, Ximena rushed back to her spot. She knelt in the sand and looked closely at the little plant. And there, peeking out, was a tiny speck of green. Her heart did a little happy jump. Every day, Ximena brought the plant a little water from her can. She would sing it soft songs that her abuela taught her. The tiny green shoot grew into a strong stem with a little bud at the very top. Then, one morning, she found the most beautiful flower she had ever seen. Its petals were the color of the sunrise, a vibrant pink against the brown sand. The desert's magic had woken up. Ximena looked all around. She saw the tall cacti, the sleepy lizards, and the warm rocks. The desert wasn't empty at all. It was full of life, just waiting for a little love and hope to help it bloom. And she knew she had plenty of both to share. Anya and the Mountain of Wishes. In a little wooden dacha, nestled at the foot of a great white mountain, lived a girl named Anya. The mountain was so tall, its peak was always dusted with snow, like a giant dipped in sugar. Her babushka called it the Mountain of Wishes. "They say," her grandmother would whisper, her voice like the crackle of a warm fire, "that any wish made from the very top will be carried to the stars and come true." Anya had a wish so big and bright, it filled her whole heart. It was a secret wish, just for her. "I must climb the mountain, babushka," she declared one morning, her eyes shining with determination. She pulled on her warmest Valenki boots, her cozy shuba coat, and a hat that flopped over her ears. The climb began. The snow crunched under Anya's boots, and the wind whispered secrets through the tall pine trees. The path was steep, and soon her legs began to ache. A great snowy owl, with eyes like golden moons, blinked at her from a branch. Who, it seemed to say. The path to a wish is never easy. Higher and higher she climbed, until the trees grew sparse. The wind grew stronger, trying to push her back. Anya felt tired and cold, but then she thought of her wish, and a little fire of courage warmed her from the inside. "I can do this," she whispered to the wind. Just then, she saw a flash of white fur. A little Arctic fox was whimpering, its paw trapped beneath a fallen branch. Forgetting she was tired, Anya rushed over and, with a great heave, pushed the heavy branch aside. The little fox, now free, licked her mitten with its tiny pink tongue. Then it gave a happy yip and bounded ahead, turning to look back at her. It led her to a hidden path, one sheltered from the wind, that zigzagged up the rocks like a secret staircase. With the fox's help, the climb became easier. Soon the sky began to blush with the colors of sunset, turning the snow pink and gold. Anya looked up. She could see the very top of the mountain, so close she felt she could almost touch the first star peeking out in the twilight sky. With one last push, she was there, She stood on the top of the Mountain of Wishes. Below her, the world was a quiet blanket of snow and twinkling village lights. The little Arctic fox curled up by her boots, and together they watched the stars pop out, one by one. It was time. Anya closed her eyes, thought of her big, bright wish, and whispered it to the brightest star. She didn't wish for a doll or for sweets. She wished for her babushka to have the strength to walk in her garden again and to tell her stories by the fire every night. The journey down the mountain felt as light as a dream. When she opened the door to her dasha, her babushka was standing there, a wide smile on her face. Anya ran into her arms for a hug, and she understood. The real magic wasn't just at the top of the mountain, it was in the courage it took to climb it, and the love that filled her wish. Arav and the Sky Kite. Arav watched from his window as a rainbow of kites danced in the afternoon sky. Dada, he asked his grandfather, can we fly a kite too? Dada's eyes twinkled. Of course, little one, but we won't fly just any kite. We will make a magical sky kite. He brought out a special wooden box filled with colorful paper, string, and thin bamboo sticks. Magical? Arav whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. Dada nodded. The magic is special, Arav. It comes from the hands that build it together. They worked all afternoon. Arav chose the brightest blue paper, the color of a perfect sky. He watched as Dada carefully cut and glued it to the frame. Then, Arav attached a long, shimmering tail made of colorful ribbons. At last, their sky kite was ready. They took it to the rooftop, where a gentle breeze was waiting to play. Now for the magic, Dada said, placing the kite string in Arav's hand. Arav held the string tightly. With a running start and a gentle push from Dada, the sky kite leaped into the air. It climbed and climbed, a blue diamond soaring against the vast, open sky. It's flying, Dada. It's really flying, Arav shouted, his heart filled with happiness. The kite dipped and swirled, dancing on the wind as if it were alive. Dada came and stood beside him, putting a warm arm around his shoulders. The kite is not magical because it flies, my boy, he said softly. It is magical because we are flying it together. Arav looked from the kite, so high and free, to his grandfather's kind and loving face. And in that moment, Arav understood. The real magic wasn't just in the soaring kite. It was right there, on the rooftop, in the warmth of his Dada's hug, sharing a perfect windy afternoon. Aiko and the Paper Lantern. In a small village nestled by a quiet river in Japan, lived a little girl named Aiko. Aiko was gentle and kind, but she carried a secret fear inside her heart. She was afraid of the dark. Her grandfather, a kind man with eyes that crinkled when he smiled, noticed a little shadow that crossed Aiko's face as the sun went down. The dark is only empty, little one, he said softly. It is waiting for someone to fill it with light. The next day, her grandfather presented her with a beautiful gift. It was a paper lantern, as white as a heron's wing. On its side, he had painted a single sleeping firefly. This is a lantern of courage, he whispered. That night, as the shadows in her room grew long and mysterious, Aiko's heart beat like a tiny drum. Taking a deep breath to steady her hands, she carefully lit the small candle inside the lantern. A soft, warm glow bloomed within the paper walls, and then something magical happened. The painted firefly on the lantern began to stir. It blinked its tiny light, once, then twice. With a gentle flutter, the firefly lifted right off the paper, becoming a real, shimmering creature of light. It danced in the air before her, its glow pushing back the shadows. Aiko wasn't scared anymore. She was enchanted. Aiko stood and carried her lantern to the window. With the little firefly circling her head like a tiny, personal star, she looked out into the night. The darkness no longer seemed empty or frightening. It was beautiful. The moonlight turned the leaves of the maple tree to silver, and the river flowed like a ribbon of dark silk. Her small light made the world seem peaceful and full of quiet wonder. After a while, the little firefly settled back onto the lantern, its light fading back into the painting. But the warmth and courage it had shared with Aiko stayed inside her heart. From that day on, every night was an adventure. With her paper lantern by her side, Aiko knew that even in the deepest dark, a single spark of light held enough magic to fill her heart with courage and hope until the morning sun returned. Samir and the Market of Dreams. In the heart of a city that hummed with ancient stories, lived a young boy named Samir. More than anything, Samir loved the Grand Souk, a maze of wonders where every turn promised a new adventure. One morning, with a small, empty pouch, he went looking for treasure. The air was thick with the sweet scent of dates and the spicy aroma of saffron. Silks in every color of the rainbow hung like waterfalls from the stalls, and the sound of merchants calling and coppersmiths hammering filled Samir's ears. So many treasures, he whispered to himself. Samir stopped at a stall filled with carved wooden animals and spinning tops that whirled like dancers. He longed for one, but his pouch was empty. Nearby, he saw a girl sitting alone on a woven rug, her head bowed. She wasn't looking at any of the market's wonders. Forgetting the toys, Samir walked over to her. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. The girl looked up, her eyes like sad pools of honey. "I've lost my lucky bead," she sniffled. "It was blue, like the sky just after sunset. My grandmother gave it to me." Samir looked at the bustling market floor, a sea of feet and fallen leaves. Finding one tiny bead seemed impossible. But seeing Yasmin's sad face, he made a decision. "I will help you find it," he declared. "We will be treasure hunters together." A small smile touched Yasmin's lips, the first spark of hope in her eyes. "You will?" she asked. Samir nodded bravely. Together, they began their search. They crawled under tables piled high with figs and dates. They peered behind giant clay pots filled with olives. They asked a kind man selling lanterns if he had seen a flash of blue, but he only shook his head with a smile. They didn't find the bead, but something else happened. As they searched, they started to talk. Samir told Yasmin about his dream of owning a spinning top, and Yasmin told him how her grandmother taught her to weave. They laughed when a mischievous monkey tried to steal a pomegranate. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "I'm sorry we couldn't find your bead," Samir said. Yasmin smiled, a real, bright smile this time. "It's okay," she said, pulling a colorful thread from her pocket. She quickly wove it into a bracelet and tied it around Samir's wrist. Samir looked at the simple, colorful bracelet. It wasn't a spinning top or a shiny gem, but it felt more precious than anything in the entire souk. He had come to the market looking for treasure for his pouch, but he was leaving with something far better, a treasure for his heart. He had found a friend. Moana and the Song of the Sea. On an island where the sun kissed the sand, lived a girl named Moana. More than anything, she loved the sea. She would spend her days by the shore, not just playing in the waves, but listening to them. "The sea sings a song," her grandmother used to say. "You just have to learn how to listen." Moana listened to the swish of the waves on the sand and the hush of the water pulling back. She heard whispers in the spray and melodies in the deep rumbles. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle, Moana heard a new sound. It wasn't the usual song of the waves. It was a soft, sad little cry carried on the breeze. It seemed to be calling for help. Moana stood up and looked out at the dark water. The little cry came again, a bit stronger this time. Without hesitation, she waded into the warm sea, following the sound that only she seemed to hear. The voice led her to a cluster of black rocks near the shore. There, tangled in an old fishing net, was a tiny baby sea turtle. It looked at her with big, frightened eyes and let out another soft cry. "Oh, you poor thing," Moana whispered. "The sea told me you were in trouble." Carefully and gently, she began to untangle the net from the little turtle's flippers. The turtle, who she decided to call Honu, watched her, seeming to understand she was there to help. Finally, the last piece of the net came free. Moana lifted the little turtle and placed him gently in a clear rock pool. Honu stretched his flippers and swam a happy little circle, as if to say, "Thank you." Moana stayed with Honu until he was strong enough to swim back to the open sea. He swam close to her, nudging her hand with his head before disappearing into the deeper water. As Moana walked back to the shore, she felt a wave gently lap at her feet. On the sand where the water had been lay a perfect pearly shell, shimmering in the moonlight. It was a gift, a thank you from the sea. Moana held the shell to her ear. She could hear the ocean's song, louder and clearer than ever before. She knew then that her grandmother was right. If you listen closely, nature's voice can guide you to the most wonderful adventures of all. Oliver and the Magic Hat. In the heart of London, a city of red buses and tall clocks, lived a boy named Oliver. Oliver was a wonderful watcher. He watched brave pigeons chase crumbs and busy people rush by, but when it came to being brave himself, he felt very small. One rainy afternoon, Oliver and his mum ducked into a curious little shop filled with forgotten treasures. Tucked away on a high shelf, covered in a whisper of dust, sat a handsome black top hat. It seemed to be waiting just for him. "May I try it?" he whispered. His mom nodded. The hat was a little too big and wobbled on his head, but as it settled, a funny, warm feeling fizzed through him, right down to his toes. He stood up a little taller. The next day at the park, Oliver saw the giant, twisty slide. Usually, it looked like a scary metal monster, but today, with his new hat held tightly in his hands, it just looked like a slide, a very big slide. He took a deep breath, climbed the tall ladder, step by shaky step, and whoosh! He zipped down the slide, the wind whistling past his ears. He landed in the sand with a soft thump and a giant grin. He had done it. At school, it was time for show and tell. Oliver's tummy did flip-flops. He had to talk about his favorite book in front of everyone. He brought his hat with him, tucked safely in a box. He took a deep breath, imagining the warm, fizzy feeling of the hat. He told his class about the brave knight in his book. His voice didn't even wobble. When he finished, everyone clapped. Oliver felt a warm glow of pride. Walking home, a sudden gust of wind snatched the hat from his head. It tumbled through the air and landed with a splat in a big, muddy puddle. Oliver's heart sank. The hat was wet and floppy. The magic was ruined. The next day, a new boy stood alone in the schoolyard. Oliver wanted to ask him to play, but he felt that old, small feeling creep back. His hat was at home, drying by the fire. But then he remembered the whoosh of the slide and the sound of his classmates clapping. He took a deep breath, just like before, and walked over. "Do you want to play?" he asked. The boy smiled a huge smile. Yes, at that moment, Oliver understood. The hat wasn't magic. The magic was the courage that had been inside him all along. The hat had just helped him believe it. Liam and the Kangaroos Jump. In the vast, sun-drenched land of Australia, where the earth was red and the sky was a brilliant blue, lived a boy named Liam. Liam loved watching the kangaroos bound across the plains, their powerful legs carrying them on big adventures. But Liam's own adventures were small. The world beyond his backyard fence seemed a little too big and a little too quiet. One sunny morning, Liam spotted a small kangaroo near the fence. It wasn't bouncing boldly like the others. It stayed close to a eucalyptus tree, nibbling nervously on a leaf. It looked just as shy as Liam felt. Liam's heart gave a little thump. The joey looked thirsty. Forgetting to be scared, Liam tiptoed back to the house, filled a small bowl with water, and carefully placed it just outside the fence. He backed away and watched from a distance. Slowly, the little kangaroo hopped towards the bowl. It took a long drink, its twitching nose just inches from the fence. Liam smiled. He decided to call his new friend Pip. Every day, Liam would bring Pip fresh water and tasty leaves. And every day, Pip would hop a little closer. One afternoon, the blue sky turned a bruised purple. A strong wind began to whip through the trees, and a low rumble echoed in the distance. A big storm was coming. Pip huddled by the fence, trembling with fear. Through the wind, Liam saw a large kangaroo standing on a distant ridge. It was Pip's mother, she called out. A soft sound carried on the wind. But a wide open gully lay between Pip and his mum, and the little Joey was too frightened to make the big jump. Liam looked at his trembling friend, and then at the worried mother kangaroo. He knew what he had to do. The world outside the fence still seemed big, but Pip needed him. Liam took a deep breath, unlatched the gate, and stepped out into the wind. "It's okay, Pip," he said softly. "We can do it together." Liam walked slowly towards the gully, looking back to make sure Pip was following. He stopped at the edge. It wasn't so wide up close. Liam took a small hop over a puddle. "See? A little jump," he encouraged. Pip watched Liam. He wiggled his nose, twitched his ears, and then, gathering all his courage, he crouched down low and sprang into the air. He flew over the gully in one magnificent, brave bound, landing safely on the other side. He hopped straight to his mother, who nudged him with her nose. From his side of the gully, Liam watched Pip and his mother bound away together. A warm, proud feeling filled his chest. He had been brave for his friend. He looked at the big, open world around him. It didn't seem so scary anymore. Liam knew that bravery was just like a kangaroo's jump. It starts with a small wobble, but it can take you farther than you ever imagined. Amara and the Drum of the Heart. In a village nestled between rolling green hills, where the sun painted the earth gold, lived a girl named Amara. Her village was peaceful, but quiet. The weavers worked at their looms, the farmers tended their yams, and the elders told stories only to the wind. Everyone had their own rhythm, but they had forgotten how to share a heartbeat. Amara held the drum her grandmother had given her. It was called the Drum of the Heart, and its wood was warm and smooth. Feeling the silence all around her, Amara placed her hands on the drum's skin. She closed her eyes, thought of the village as one big family, and struck the drum. Boom! The first beat was as deep and strong as a giant's heartbeat. The sound rolled through the village. It reached Kofi, the weaver, whose fingers flew across his loom. The boom of the drum matched the thwack-thwack of his shuttle. He paused, a smile touching his lips, and his fingers started tapping the rhythm on the wooden frame of his loom. The rhythm danced into the fields where Adama was harvesting yams. The boom-boom of the drum echoed the thud of her hoe in the rich earth. Her feet, which had been moving slowly, began to stomp and shuffle, turning her hard work into a joyful dance. Soon, a new sound joined the drum. It was the laughter of children. They tumbled out of their homes, drawn by the irresistible beat. They clapped their hands and spun in circles, their feet making soft, pattering rhythms in the dust, all while Amara played on. Sitting alone in the shade of his hut was Ba'ako, the oldest storyteller. He had not told a story in many seasons, for he felt no one was listening. He heard the drum and frowned, but then the rhythm wove its way into his memory, finding the beat of an ancient tale. Bayako stood up and followed the sound. He saw Amara under the baobab tree, her hands a blur on the drum, her face bright with joy. He saw the children dancing and the villagers smiling. He walked towards Amara, the rhythm pulling him forward. When Ba'ako reached the tree, he did not speak. He simply opened his mouth and let a story fly out. His voice was a song, rising and falling with the beat of Amara's drum. He told the story of the first sunrise, and the village listened, captivated. The sound grew. Kofi brought a small gourd shaker, adding a gentle shik-shik to the beat. Adama clapped her hands, a sharp and happy sound. The whole village became an orchestra, with Amara's drum at its center, beating like a strong, happy heart. The sun began to set, casting long, dancing shadows. But the music did not stop. The quiet village was now filled with stories, songs, and laughter. Amara looked at the faces around her, all shining with joy, and she knew. The drum of the heart hadn't just made music, it had reminded them that the best rhythm is the one you make together. Noah and the Boat of Dreams. In a little cottage nestled by a deep blue fjord lived a small boy named Noah. He had a boat, not a big one, but a small wooden one just his size. Every night, as the northern lights painted the sky, Noah would whisper his dreams to the boat. One night, a tiny star, brighter than all the rest, twinkled down and landed on the bow of his boat. "The sea is wide and the world is big," the star whispered. "But every journey begins with a single step of trust. Will you sail with me?" Noah's heart fluttered like a little bird. The fjord looked dark and deep, but he looked at the steady light of the star and felt a warmth spread through him. He took a deep breath, untied the rope, and pushed his little boat into the water. The Boat of Dreams sailed silently through the night. It didn't need a big sail or a strong oar. It sailed on Noah's trust. Soon, they met a gentle giant of a whale who hummed a deep, rumbling lullaby that made the water ripple. "Where are you going, little sailor?" hummed the whale. "I don't know," Noah replied honestly. "I'm just following the light." The whale smiled a big, watery smile. "That is the best way to travel," it rumbled, before diving deep below. Next, a family of puffins with their colorful beaks landed softly on the edge of his boat. They chattered and chirped, telling him stories of the cliffs where they nested and the silver fish they caught. They weren't afraid of the little boat. The puffins showed Noah how to read the patterns in the waves and listen to the secrets of the wind. They taught him that even the smallest creatures can be brave. As dawn approached, they flew off, leaving a feather behind as a gift. The Boat of Dreams sailed on, guided by the star, which now began to fade with the morning light. It carried Noah to an island he had never seen before, covered in soft moss and tiny, bell-shaped flowers. He spent the morning exploring, feeling braver than he ever had before. He had sailed through the dark, met new friends, and found a new place all by himself. He knew it was because he had taken that first step of trust. As the sun climbed higher, Noah sailed his little boat home. The star was gone, but its warmth stayed in his heart. He knew that every night, the Boat of Dreams would be waiting, ready for another journey that began with a single, trusting step.